For an estimated 70 million Americans, a past criminal record can feel like a life sentence. But what if there was a way to legally, truly clear the slate? Today, we're diving into expungement, a legal tool that promises a fresh start. But is it really the second chance it's cracked up to be? Let's get into it. To really get why this is so important, let's make it personal for a second. Have you, or maybe someone you know, ever felt like a mistake from way back when is just this constant barrier? You're trying to get a decent job, you're trying to get a loan, or even just renting an apartment, but this shadow from the past just keeps popping up. And yeah, that shadow is a criminal record. Its effects are huge. I mean, long after a sentence is served and all the fines are paid, that record can keep slamming doors shut, basically extending the punishment for years or even for a lifetime. It's a really heavy weight that can stop people from truly moving on. So what's the answer? Well, potentially, it's something called expungement. It's the legal process that's designed to get certain arrests or convictions sealed or erased from public view, clearing the way for a real second chance. But as we're about to find out, what the word erased actually means, well, that's the first big thing we need to unpack. Okay, so first things first, we have to understand that the word expungement itself can be a little tricky, because depending on where you live, it can mean two completely different things. Yeah, there's no single national rule book for this in the US. What it actually does to your record is totally up to the laws of the state where the conviction happened in the first place. In some states, expungement is basically like hitting the delete button. It's an eraser. The actual records of the arrest and the conviction are physically destroyed or deleted. So for most legal reasons, like when you're applying for a job, you can honestly, truthfully say it never happened. This is the most complete fresh start you can get. But then in other states, what they call expungement is actually record sealing. And you can think of this more like putting the record in a locked file cabinet. It's taken out of public view, so most background checks won't find it. But, and this is a big but, the record still exists. It can still be accessed by law enforcement and certain government agencies if they need to see it. So you can see why this difference is so important. With a true expungement, that record is gone, and you can legally say it never happened. With sealing, it's just hidden for most people, but it's not gone forever. Understanding this distinction is pretty much everything when you're figuring out what a second chance really looks like. So now that we know what expungement is, who actually qualifies? This is often the single biggest hurdle in the whole process, the rules of eligibility. And just like the definition, the rules for who's eligible are complicated, and they change from state to state. Courts don't just look at the one thing you want to clear. They're often looking at your entire criminal history to decide if you even qualify. Generally, states look at four main things. First, the type of offense is huge. Misdemeanors are almost always easier to clear than felonies. Second, there's pretty much always a waiting period after your sentence is totally complete. And finally, you have to have paid off all your fines, fees, and any restitution tied to the case. It's also really important to know what generally can't be expunged. Almost every state will block serious violent crimes, sex offenses, and felonies that resulted in someone's death. And there are special rules for commercial drivers. Because of federal regulations, certain driving offenses can stand on the record for up to 55 years, no matter what state law says. Okay, so let's say you meet all the criteria. You're eligible. What's next? Now we get into the practical stuff. How to actually navigate the legal system, and of course, what it's going to cost. The process itself usually breaks down into three key steps. It all starts with filing a formal petition in the county where the conviction happened. After that, you have to legally notify all the relevant agencies, like the prosecutor's office and the police. And finally, most cases will end up with a court hearing where a judge listens to the arguments and makes the final call. So, what's the price tag on this second chance? Well, the costs break down into a few categories. The biggest chunk is usually attorney fees. Then you've got mandatory court filing fees, plus some other costs for things like getting copies of all your old court records. When you add it all up, the costs can really vary. A super simple, straightforward misdemeanor case might only cost a few $100, but a more complex felony expungement, especially one that needs a lot of legal legwork, can easily run into the thousands. So after all that, after navigating the process and paying the price, what's life actually like after an expungement? If a judge says yes and grants your petition, what really changes? Is it the complete fresh start that people are hoping for? This right here. This question is the single most powerful benefit of getting an expungement. on job applications, on housing applications, you can now legally answer no when you're asked about that conviction. In fact, some states actually require employers to use this exact wording to account for expunged records. That is an absolute game changer.
But, and this is a big but, it's not a magic wand that just makes every trace of the past disappear. It is super important to understand the limitations and what an expungement doesn't do.
So let's be real about it. There are 3 key limitations to keep in mind. First, even when records are sealed, law enforcement can often still see them. Second, it doesn't just erase federal rules, like the ones we talked about for commercial driver's licenses. And finally, it doesn't automatically restore every single civil right. For instance, in many states, expunging a domestic violence conviction will not restore a person's right to own a gun. So, yeah, it's a complicated process. It has real costs and it has real limitations. But expungement is still such a vital tool. It allows our justice system to say that one mistake in the past shouldn't mean a life sentence of blocked opportunities. For millions of people, it's not about erasing the past, but about earning the right to build a brand new future.